Hi everyone, I hope you won't mind looking at the altar for the duration of this video. I know that there's been a lot of videos not showing my face recently on the channel, but I'm just not feeling it today. I'm a bit windswept and a bit tired and just not in the mood for facing the camera, but I just felt the urge to make a video. I haven't actually recorded anything since I was in Kerry, and that was quite a while ago now, at least 3 weeks ago now, I think. So today I thought I might make a faith food video because I, didn't really keep up with that particular plan. And I think this is actually going to turn into something a little bit more as well. I think I'm going to go on some sort of little rant, but it's definitely going to be in the vein of sharing something with you that inspired something in me, that tapped me into a feeling, that tapped me into something about my beliefs in divinity or my beliefs in what it is that I'm doing with my spiritual practice. And yeah, hopefully it will be inspiring for you, and then I'm gonna just talk about that a little bit once I've shared it with you. So what I'm reading to you today is just a short section, sort of about half a paragraph, from a book called Becoming Animal by David Abram. I have read another of his books previously, and I am just about finished reading this book now. I will probably make some sort of review of this book in total, in its entirety when I finished it, because it's been a really wonderful read in terms of animism and pantheism and all that kind of good stuff. So without further ado, I'll read you a little bit of this book. So this is from towards the end of the book. And he says, "Our greatest hope for the future rests not in the triumph of any single set of beliefs, but in the acknowledgement of a felt mystery that underlies all our doctrines. It rests in the remembering of that corporeal faith that flows underneath all mere beliefs, the human body's implicit faith in the steady sustenance of the air and the renewal of light every dawn, its faith in mountains and rivers and the enduring support of the ground, in the silent germination of seeds and the cyclical return of the salmon. There are no priests needed in such a faith, no intermediaries or experts necessary to effect our contact with the sacred, since, carnally immersed as we are in the thick of this breathing planet, we each have our own intimate access to the big mystery." So there's so much in this, and a lot of what made me jump on this paragraph actually came from my training in religious studies. That there's a lot of there's a lot of things popping up here that people in religious studies have historically been prickly about, shall we say. And there's also just a lot of very classic kind of tropes that we see in contemporary alternative spirituality, such as the idea of us being our own authority and so on. But first I want to just say that it also struck a chord with me just on a personal level, and realizing how much this kind of language, these kind of thoughts really inspire me and really ring true to me, just really reminded me how much I'm at odds with a lot of the thinking in religious studies, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it really reminded me of, so I mean, what he's talking about here, this sense of the sacred, or this kind of, I'm trying to find what's the phrase he uses. He doesn't actually say he doesn't say anything about religious essence, but that's essentially what he's talking about here, that yes, of a felt mystery that underlines all our doctrines. So he's implying here that there is this kind of innate human religiosity, right? But he doesn't actually explicitly say that, all religions have this underlying truth or essence to them. And he's also not actually defining that as some sort of transcendental God. He's pretty much just defining it as our experience of the earth, of our experience as physical beings in this kind of physical experience that we're having. And there's nothing actually particularly mystical or theistic about this statement. But I mean, as you can see, it's classic pantheism or animism, in that it's kind of appealing to religion as a practice or as an impulse, as something that can express this just very natural human experience of being interconnected, of feeling awe in the face of our interconnectedness with the world around us. And that to me is a very beautiful thing, because it doesn't require faith in anything supernatural. It doesn't require faith in something transcendental. It doesn't require anything except that we fall back into the moment, that we spend time allowing ourselves to remember that we are physical beings, physical bodies, experiencing and partaking in this experience of life. And that's very beautiful to me. It really taps me back into a lot of the feelings and thoughts that I was having when I was coming back to spirituality and approaching it from a place of just deep agnosticism about divinity, about gods or goddess or God or anything like that. And I really needed words like this, and words like those that I found in other places, written by other pantheists and animists and pagans, that affirmed the value in celebrating, in formally celebrating this experience that we're having, and doing it in a quote-unquote religious way. A way that is inspired by traditions that have traditionally been considered to be religious, or existing, religious traditions that, basically just practices and beliefs that the people who hold those practices and beliefs generally consider themselves to be religious. There's a whole rabbit hole that I could jump down into in talking about the field of religious studies and its attitude towards this idea of there being a sort of essence to religion, that there is an innate kind of human need or experience or reaction to the world, this innate human part of the human being that is religious, that religions are expressing. Because it's and I have said this before in the channel, I've talked about this extensively. It's not cool in religious studies. it's not considered okay anymore to accept that, because it's seen as being theology. It's seen to be incumbent upon a belief in some form of divinity, and that it's essentially just stating or asserting a kind of pretty much Christocentric Protestant view that, oh well, the essence of religion is the Christian God, and that's kind of the underlying suggestion, and it's made in much more complex ways than that. But I have problems with that, because I feel like there are times when talking about this essence of religion, or talking about this innate impulse that humans have towards religiosity, there are times when it's problematic, and it's definitely very difficult to talk comparatively about religion, quote unquote religion, because anytime that we look towards other cultures and other people and try to label what they're doing as religion, we are essentially imposing our own views and belief structures and traditions on them. So it's inherently problematic, and that's fine. But I'm not really that interested in comparative religion. I don't think. I'm not really interested too much in exploring some essence that definitely underlies all of these very specific traditions, because I'm not really interested in those. I'm not really interested in drawing boundaries wherein certain human behaviours and beliefs that are religious and ones that aren't, because I don't think that's how the world works. And I agree with the field of religious studies when they say that that's not how the world works, and that it's kind of impossible to define religion, and it's impossible to draw those boundaries. But that, I've only just recently come to realise that doesn't mean that there isn't such an impulse, that there isn't something about the human condition, about our experience of the world and our relationship to it, that doesn't evoke certain desires and certain practices and certain beliefs. And it's just really tricky to approach that from a religious studies perspective, because religious studies is always looking at things from, well, certainly the religious studies that I've been trained in, that I'm partaking in, it's always looking at things from a sociological or anthropological, but in my training it's been predominantly sociological standpoint. So, you know, it assumes that if you start talking about an essence of religion, that you're trying to sort of shove beliefs and practices into boxes and say, yes, that's religious, that's not religious. And for me, that's not the case. So yeah, I can see how when you're looking at it from a sociological perspective, it's like the only conclusion you can come to is that it's basically impossible. But yeah, and because for that reason, because religious studies is basically the study of people who are behaving religiously, it can't be coming from a perspective of the experience of the divine. It can't be coming from a theistic perspective. And what the conclusion I've come to is that it is inherently atheistic, and that you have to be coming from an atheistic standpoint, or at least like holding yourself in an atheistic space in order to do religious studies in that way, because you can't, most of the time you're almost sort of not allowed to bring the sacred into it, to bring divinity into the question. It's not really something that anyone wants to talk about, because it can't be talked about sociologically. Yeah, and that's a huge problem for me. So I didn't mean to ramble on about that particular topic quite as much as I did, but I just wanted to say for the record that I know I said I think I primarily talked about this in an audio file that I shared on the newsletter, so that's a much smaller kind of bunch of people who are actually getting and reading and listening to those than who watch my videos. But I know I made an audio file at one point talking about how I had basically lost my faith in there being innate religiosity in humans, and that religion wasn't an innate thing. And I had already kind of come out of that again, come out the other end of that, but reading this paragraph really clarified this for me. And it made me finally see that difference. That I think I finally maybe come to realize that there's two different parts in my head. There are like two different ways that I'm interacting with the concept of religion, and two different ways that I interact with this paragraph. I can jump all over it and say, oh, essence of religion, bad. But on the other hand, I read it and I think, well, yes. And also what's really beautiful about this paragraph is that it's not even suggesting any particular form of divinity, any particular kind of supernatural belief in divinity. That is the thing that is underlying all of these doctrines, and that underlies these kind of feelings, this sense of awe in the face of our connection with the earth. It's really just stating the fact that humans feel things when they observe their surroundings, that they feel things when they allow themselves to really take in their role in this much greater thing, when they spend time outside of civilization and society, when they spend time in quote-unquote nature, in wilderness of any kind, and when we step outside of our kind of social bubble, our human-made bubble, that we feel something. And also that it's important for us it's important for our happiness to allow some of that kind of feeling into our lives. To just be. to remember that we don't just live in our heads, we're not just existing in some sort of weird cyber bubble where we just think in our own minds and interact with other people online and occasionally have to do physical things with our bodies, but that we are these living, breathing parts of this much bigger thing. And the scale and scope of that bigger thing is it's awe-inspiring and it's beautiful, and it can't be denied that the feeling that there's this great beauty in acknowledging that. There's great joy in acknowledging that and remembering that. However we want to do that. So for some people it can be just, well, for some people it can be through exploring these ideas through philosophy or science. For some people it can be just through going on walks, hiking and biking and camping and being in, like I say, quote unquote, nature. And for other people it is in having a spiritual practice or a religious practice, particularly earth-based practices like mine, and probably like most of you watching this have yourselves, in creating sort of symbolic structures and practices and systems that for us feel evocative of that connectivity and are a celebration, a pure celebration for us of what it means for us to be a part of that and how it makes us feel. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I could go on, but I've already talked a lot longer than I was expecting to, actually. I think this book and other books like it, I need to spend more time with, and I want to start making more videos like this, and if it's more comfortable for me to be behind the camera, then I think I'll do that, if that's okay with you guys, because whatever gets me sitting down and talking about this stuff is a good thing. I haven't had enough of this in my life recently, and it's been, I feel a little bit like the life that I've been living for the past couple of years has been just very slowly chipping away at and eroding my soul. And like I left something really integral to me behind when I left Ireland, and forgot to keep doing all the things that were making me who I am and were making me feel like a whole and joyful human. So I know that I'm making these kinds of videos in particular, but pretty much all of my videos, as much for me as I am for you. It's an absolute blessing to have an audience and to have that, just the very slight pressure of a very positive, but positive slight pressure of knowing that there are people out there who may be expecting to hear from me, because it makes me sit down and talk about these things, and I need to do it more. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking. So thanks very much for watching this if you've stayed the whole way through, and obviously if you have, then this won't be relevant. I was going to say, if you only watch the beginning section and the quote at the beginning, then that's fine too. Obviously you didn't if you're listening to this, but just for future videos, if I do get into more of a habit of doing this, if you only want to listen to the quotation from the book or from wherever it is, on whatever it is I'm talking about, and then move on, that's fine. But it's good for me as much as anyone else to delve into this stuff in more depth. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you again soon, hopefully face to face.